So now this is my firewall policy this is my DPI firewall for HTTP traffic inspection, but I have to apply it somewhere. So this has to be applied under regular class map configuration. So I want to inspect HTTP traffic and drop the traffic if destination is test.com or if it's any tunneling. Which means what I have to do is I have to build in a new class map, a regular one of type inspect. Call it CMAP of type HTTP, a regular CMAP HTTP class map. Match protocol HTTP. Then I want to apply this firewall policy in the direction of LAN to internet. So PMAP LAN to internet in here. What I'm going to do is I'm going to attach this class map. I'm going to say class this. I'm going to say inspect. So inspect HTTP traffic. But then I'm going to apply the layer 7 policy map as a service policy. Conf T. I'm going to hit here service policy HTTP and the name of my application inspection policy map. And of course in this regular, so you cannot apply the DPI, and it makes sense, you cannot apply the application inspection policy, you know, just by itself in a zone pair in there. Because again, what we built so far, like before we did DPI, class maps, policy maps, zone pairs, those blocks control what traffic flows to the router and how. If I want to do deep packet inspection, I have to apply the deep packet inspection policy, the application policy, to the existing policy, the regular layer 3 or 4 policy, which controls how traffic flows to the firewall. So it makes sense that I have to apply the DPI inspection first of all to an inspect action of the firewall, because I want, how can I inspect the application layer without an inspect action? And then of course the inspect action has to be enforced to a class map which matches on that protocol which I'm inspecting. Let's make this work, and then I'm going to break this to confirm that if I was saying here mesh protocol FTP, the router is not going to let me do this. Because I say, with this configuration I would state inspect FTP as this HTTP policy map states. I mean, how can that work, right? That's not possible. So I'm saying inspect FTP, but to the FTP inspection apply HTTP DPI. Doesn't make sense. So if you want to apply HTTP inspection, you apply that application inspection within a class map which has an inspect action, and in that class map you match only on the protocol for which you want to perform application inspection. Okay, before we go to the verification, there's a question from Matthew. So Christian, would you use an ASA for this deep packet regex filtering, or is there a more dedicated device as doing this DPI and router will impact this ability to route? Also, the ASA is going to get affected. Not that much as a router, but it's going to get affected as well. To do any kind of application, I'm going to answer your question, that question in a couple. Okay, let's finish up this topic, and I'm going to answer your question in the end. Exit. So let's say show policy. Let's verify our config. Before we test it, let's verify our config. Show policy firewall. Config. Class map. HTTP. And there we go, my HTTP application inspection class map. Show policy firewall config policy map. HTTP. And I'm saying that I've defined, I match on the application layer in that class map. And if I match on the traffic, I'm going to reset the session and log. And show parameter map type regex. And I have only one regex configured. if you say show policy firewall config zone pair ZP LAN to WAN, LAN to internet, not to WAN, then we should see in here that they go for the HTTP traffic, for which I have an inspect action. I'm attaching an application inspection layer 7 policy map. Okay. Now let's try and go to, first of all, let's go on PCA and try to browse to CISCO.com. Let's make sure that router 3 has the HTTP server enabled. I don't want to get authenticated. I just want to make sure that 3 has the server enabled. Server status. And it is disabled. Let's enable that real fast. Let's confirm it got enabled. And it did. So let's try to browse to cisco.com, and that should work from PCA. Let's open up a browser. Cisco.com. So I got connected, which means the session works. The router asked me for authentication. I don't care to authenticate. Of course, I could authenticate via the, I'm not sure if it's, let's say, router 3 Cisco. Doesn't work, doesn't matter, so I'm not going to spend time on that. Let's confirm that the session worked. Let's look in the firewall state table. Show policy firewall on ASA on router 1. We even see that the session was built because of my perimeter map of type inspect. Well, that's something which is funny. Let's see that. So show policy firewall session zone pair ZP LAN to WAN, LAN to internet. So the session is established from PCA to router 3 on port 80, but it matched on the class map TCP UDP, not on my HTTP class map. Also, if we go, let's say cancel, if we go to test.com, it's likewise going to work because it's going to match on the same class map. If you go in the policy in the file now, I see another session. Let's open the browser again. I should see another session being established. So it looks like it works also to test.com. And go it does from PCA to router 3 again. Because it matches on this class map of type TCP UDP. Let's see why. Should run policy map. And now I'm going to answer another question of Matthew about your operation, which we spoke about it, but we haven't saw it in action. We haven't seen it in action. So currently my configuration is like this, which means when the router has a traffic flowing LAN to internet, has a HTTP traffic flowing LAN to internet, it's going to parse top down the class map and stop on force match. And it's going to stop in here because that class map matches on TCP and UDP traffic. Because it's an order of operation issue. So the router matches is going to take the traffic which it sees to its zones. It's going to say, okay, it flows from the LAN to the internet. What is my zone pair configured? What is the policy map applied to that zone? And then looks in the policy map and it parses top down the class maps and stops on for match. So the router never gets a chance to actually match on my application inspection policy map because that's attached to a different class map. Because again, this class map matches on TCP and UDP traffic, which my HTTP traffic is TCP and UDP. So it stops there. So when you do any kind of to come up with a common rule, when you do any kind of match protocol, or any kind of DPI, you have to make sure that those class maps are at the top of your policy map. Like in an ACL, you're going to put the most specific entries at the top of the ACL and the less specific entries at the end of the ACL. Likewise in here, you're going to put the most specific inspections at the top of the policy map, like DPI and Mesh Protocol FTP, Mesh Protocol HTTP, and the less specific inspections at the end of the policy map, like class maps matching just on TCP or just on UDP. So if I want my policy firewall to my configuration to be enforced, I have to change the order of the class maps. And the only way to change that order, unfortunately, we cannot manually reorder them, is to remove and reapply the class maps in the specific order. So if in an access list you can inject a specific entry in a specific place or delete a specific entry, in a policy map you cannot inject a class map in a specific location. Each new class map added is going to be prepended at the end of the policy map configuration. So we have to just remove that inspection, the first class map. Remove also the other one, even though it's not required, ICMP. Remove this one, just to make sure. Put the most specific one at the top, which is going to be the application inspection policy. Then put the next one, which is more specific, which is Mesh Protocol ICMP. And put in the end the one which is less specific, which is the class map with Mesh Protocol TCP and UDP. So show run policy map. Now my LAN to internet policy map looks better now. So now when I have HTTP traffic going from LAN to internet, the device is going to parse top down all entries and see if it is going to match on the first class map. And it is going to match because this layer 3 class map matches on HTTP. And because it has a DPI policy attached, it's also going to do application inspection. So let's now try again. Go on the PC, say OK, and try to go to CISCO.com, which should work, because that's being allowed. So let's make sure that show policy map, session zone pair ZPLAN to internet, no session in there. OK, let's try to go to CISCO.com. It worked as expected, and we should see an entry in there in a state table, but I should see a session matching that class map now. Why don't I see it in there? Cancelled. Show run policy map. So LAN to internet, that is an inspect action. Let's go again from the PC, open another browser example, and let's go to CISCO.com. There we go. So probably there was something wrong on the PC again. So see again, traffic from PCA. This is an old session, close wait, probably from Mozilla. It's gonna wait for the idle timeout of 30 of whatever the default value is in there, the idle fin wait in there. So this session is established. It is from PCA to router 3 in there, and I'm matching on my HTTP inspection in there. Let's now close the browser, say cancelled, close it. Let's make sure the session is gone from the state table, and it is. And let's try and go now to test.com. And it looks to be working likewise. I'm matching the same class map. It is correct. Let's look back again on our class map. Show run class map. Type inspect HTTP. Let's verify our config. Class map. Actually, let's say this. Show class map. Show policy firewall. Let's verify our config, our DPI configuration. So now I am matching the proper layer 3 class map, but it looks like my DPI policy doesn't take effect. So let's verify the configuration for the application inspection. Show policy firewall config class map. HTTP. So this is the name, and match request header host regex URL filtering, and match request port misuse any, and it's a type match any. Let's say show parameter map type regex. Let's make sure the name of the regex matches exactly on that, and it does. Then let's make sure that the policy map matches properly in there. Show policy map. So www.test.com. Okay. Show policy firewall config. Not zone pair, but policy map for HTTP. And it matches on, this is the policy map name. It matches on this class map, CMAP DPI HTTP, which is there. And I'm saying reset and log. Well, the problem looks to be, should be in here, because I said match request header host that regex. And then in the regex, I have not matched on the host value. The host value is without www. So let's change the parameter map regex to be the proper way. Now with this configuration, I'm matching on the URI, not on the header host value from the URL from the HTTP request. So let's actually change the pattern to be to actually, so I can match on the host value from the application layer. So it should be like this, because the host value is test.com. Well, of course, let's say parameter map type regex first of all, and that, and let's remove the old pattern. And let's verify again the regex show run show parameter map type inspect. Show parameter map type inspect regex, not type inspect, type regex. And the pattern is, okay, so dot star means whatever followed by a dot, and then tst.com. So looks to be good. Let's put in our notepad configuration. And then class map that matches on URL filtering, and pmap that matches on a CMAP DPI HTTP. Okay, so now it should work. So let's go on our PCA, say cancel, close this. Let's go and make sure that show policy map, and there we go, it's already header, it's already filtered, right? But let's try again. Show policy firewall, session, zone pair, LAN to ZP LAN to internet, to make sure that there's nothing else in the state table. Okay, and let's open up on the client again a new browser to go to test.com. And it doesn't work, site can be reached, because the router resets the packet. It says application firewall It matched on the header field with the regex have been matched. And based on my configuration, which I'm matching on the host with that regex matched on test.com. It was matched. It has a reset and log option. And there we go. I see also the log in there. And the reset message was done as well because the session did not work. If we say now show policy firewall stats all, or let's say zone pair ZP LAN to internet. For this session of HTTP, for this HTTP inspection, actually there is no statistic in here. So the only way to verify this is that traffic did not work and with the log message in there. So we saw that traffic did not work. The user browser said session denied, and we saw the log message in here which confirmed that traffic was dropped. Okay, let's see if we have any questions on this topic. So the question from Matthew, so Christian, would you use an ASA for deep packet regex filtering, or is there a more dedicated device as doing this DPI on the router will impact its ability to route? So also DSA is going to get affected by doing DPI, even though both the router via zone-based policy firewall and DSA support that capability. This is something that you would do in first of all, nowadays you don't have like a lot of security, but still nowadays you would do this on the router or on DSA for small companies that they don't afford to buy a dedicated proxy or a dedicated email gateway, say like a security dedicated secure email gateway, dedicated secure web gateway, because otherwise in a production network, in an enterprise which who affords to buy the proper products, then what you're going to have is, in general, if this is your internet router, you're going to allow outbound traffic to be only TCP, UDP, DNS, and maybe ESP. You're going to inspect those types of traffics, TCP, UDP, DNS, and ESP, to make sure that all traffic can leave the network, exit the network. But then actually all traffic from the network, what you're going to do is you're actually going to allow, technically speaking, the following: only TCP on port 80 and port 80 and 443, only web traffic. We're going to allow UDP traffic if there is a need. Otherwise, we just allow DNS, so UDP on port 53. You're going to allow specific types of traffic, and also ESP if you want a tunnel to work from your network. But this TCP 84 port 4 or TCP 80 and 443, the web traffic, you're not going to inspect it. You're going to, and of course, you're going to allow also TCP port 25 outbound, so the SMTP gateway can send traffic in the internet. But there's something somewhere in the DMZ in here. You're going to have that SMTP gateway and your web proxy server, which means that out on the internet, only the SMTP gateway is going to be allowed to send emails in the internet, SMTP. And also, so TCP port 25 only by the email gateway. And only the web proxy can send in the internet TCP on port 80 and port 443. Which means that all users' traffic, like PCA's web traffic, is going to be actually sent to the web gateway, and the web gateway is going to let that traffic out on the internet or not. And the web gateway is going to do the micro application filtering, like is this user doing any kind of application tunneling or not. And the web gateway is going to do SSL decryption to make sure that the user doesn't try to tunnel something malicious over SSL or to leak data from the network. And the web gateway is going to also inspect traffic to make sure that what you get from the internet is not malware, and so on. So on the internet gateway router, you're going to perform a zone-based policy firewall, with a very simple inspection of inspecting TCP port 80, 443, and 25 traffic, not at the protocol level, and UDP port 53, and pretty much that's it. And you have other dedicated appliances like the web gateway, the SMTP gateway, that cleans up the mail and web traffic, decrypts it, and enforces the policies of who can send what email, who can speak what web traffic out on the internet. So just to make sure everybody is clear on this before I move on. So this type of inspection in here, so this is my layer 7 inspection, which is simple. You build a class map type inspect HTTP, policy map type inspect HTTP. In the class map you match on the application header. In the policy map you tell you specify the action. But then to be able to apply DPI inspection, you have to apply DPI inspection under a HTTP inspection or regular HTTP inspection in here in the regular policy map. So as I stated, if we try to go in here, should run policy map. If we try to configure this one with a pass action, it's not going to let me because it's going to tell me that we have a DPI policy configured. Here we go. And it makes sense because how can you inspect at the application layer if you don't have the inspect action for that type of traffic of HTTP? Second, if you put in here and you call in a new class map, let's say do show run class map. This one, which matches on 10, let's say class map under the policy map, class map this. And we say inspect. And then we try to apply that service policy of type HTTP. It's like it's not going to let me, and that makes sense. Because the router says, what it says is you're trying to inspect HTTP traffic. You're trying to do DPI, application inspection for HTTP traffic. But you're applying that DPI policy under a class map which matches on telnet. So how can you inspect web traffic via, how can you inspect telnet traffic? How can you inspect telnet traffic as HTTP traffic? Doesn't make sense, correct? So everything makes sense in there, everything is logical.